Hey, what's up, Internet? I'm here tonight with Red Lokust.
What's up, Eric?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there. How
Thank
you
you
guys
so
doing?
much for having us, man. This is awesome.
Yeah,
That
no
was a
problem.
killer intro.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it was awesome.
All right. So, how did Red Lokust, how'd you come up with that name? Like, the whole concept?
Oh, that's a Lee question.
Yeah, that's a me question.
All
He
right.
came up with it.
There was years ago. We're talking like the early 2005, 2006, sometime. There was one of those video games on Facebook. It was one of these stupid things where you had like futuristic tanks and you were fighting other factions, and they had all these faction names, and one of them was Red Locust. And I don't know that name just and spelled with a K like that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like adopted that. It was stuck in my mind for some reason, and
All
when
right.
it came to start, that's what we picked.
So, how did both of you first start? Like, how'd you discover industrial music?
Oh, man. For me, it was it's a hodgepodge of things in the early 90s. I was in high school. My friend Don had dubbed me a Ministry tape. That was really probably the first thing, other than Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails and Ministry were like, of course, the first two. And then I saw Front 242 at Lollapalooza.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the best experience because, I've come to understand now you don't take a band like Front 242 and put them outside in the middle of the day. They're a band that was sort of born for the clubs. Awesome guys. We got to play with them, last year. Maybe it was 2 years. Yeah, it was 2 years ago already. Lee, jeez, that was 2 years ago.
No, it wasn't.
So, my first real, what really got me hooked was two things happened in quick succession. The Crow soundtrack came out, and I heard Machines of Loving Grace on there, and I heard Thrill Kill Cult on there.
Yeah.
And this was right before I graduated high school, so we're talking 94. I went and saw KMFDM play with ChemLab and Sister Machine Gun on the Angstfest tour, just because me and my buddy were looking for something to do that night. We had only heard of KMFDM, saw one of their videos, but we had never heard of either of the other bands. We got there, and we got there reasonably early. The first band, Sister Machine Gun, had already gone on, and it was still like daylight out. But it was seeing ChemLab live that completely blew me away at that show. And so after I walked out of the club that night, I was like, everything I've ever heard sucks compared to that. And I just started looking for more bands like that. And, I had Frontline Assembly, Leather Strip, Metallo and the Fixer, the list just goes on and on and on. And to where, I started shopping more for record label than bands. Like if it was on Metropolis, or if it was on Cop International, or at the time 21st Circuitry or Fifth Column, or Reconstriction was a big one back then. If it was on any of those labels, I had to pick it up just to check it out.
Right.
And that was internet was in its infancy, so you couldn't listen to it online first. Which I kind of enjoy that. I kind of wish it was still like that. I think that was more beneficial to the artists, even if they put out a subpar record. They probably sold one.
Right.
But and plus the surprise of getting something completely awesome. I remember picking up a Acumen Nation CD before they were, when they were just Acumen,
Mhm.
on a whim because of the label that they were on, and popping it in the CD player on the way home, and I was just like, holy fuck, this is amazing. And I just had a thing for electronic music that has a rock and roll kind of aesthetic to it.
Mhm.
So that's how I got into it.
All right. What about Julie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a few years older, but I I started out with the typical '80s music, the electronic music. That was where my focus always was. But then I ended up in Germany while I was stationed there, and just the music was just on a different level. I didn't have an overnight epiphany like Jim with a particular band that we went to see,
Yeah.
but saying that, one of the first bands I saw in Germany was Front 242. Nobody I knew who they were, and I just got in the car and drove. I don't remember how many hours to get to it. And they didn't blow me away because in hindsight, that live performance wasn't their best.
Mhm.
But that was where I was at. I was just in that thing, and then I ended up in England, and things changed again. But um, yeah, so I've always gravitated to the electronic side of things.
Okay. And what made you two decide to, start doing Red Locust together?
Well, I love telling this story. You
You
mind
tell
if
the
I?
story better, yeah.
My old band, I played in a band called Reinforced from like 2005 to about 2015, 16. And we had a gig at Mr. Small's Theater here in Pittsburgh, opening up for KMFDM and Inertia. Well, I had known Lee from his previous band. He was an Aslan faction
Mhm.
on the Noitek label. So um, I met Lee, I think, once or twice before that at the FGFC A20 show here in Pittsburgh. And I think again at the Suicide Commando or maybe Tactical Sect show down in Philly. And
Possibly, yeah.
but that's where I remember meeting you for the, like, in the early days before that KMFDM show. Well, I didn't know Lee was going to be there. Um,
Mhm.
and we played our set, Inertia played their set, and I think KMFDM was on at the time or had just started. I was at the merch table, and Lee came rolling up, and I was like, "Hey," um, we just got to talking, and Lee said, "Hey, I've got some, new stuff." Because I asked him, "Are you doing anything new with Aslan Faction?" And he was like, "No, but I do have some new material I could really use a vocalist for on a new project." And I was like, well, dude, I'm a fan. I would love to work with you. So uh, I was going to Las Vegas for a
Mhm.
vacation with my girlfriend. Um, it had to either be the next day or the day after. I want to say it was our flights were the next day. And I mean, this is 2015, so my memory isn't what it used to be. Um, so I'm sitting there in the airport and I open my laptop and check my email, and already there were like 6 songs sitting in there from Lee
Mhm.
to work on. And I'm like, oh my God. I said to Emily, I was like, I have tracks already from Lee. I guess I have work to do when I get back, So started working on them, pretty quickly because I wasn't doing much with Reinforced. So, and at that point, I was, working on Electronic Saviors. That would be number 4. Uh, and so the first song that we ever commercially released, I think, is on there. I did the original version of Speechless.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it was a good partnership, and still continues to be,
Mhm.
to this day. So I really like the story of how we met. It's cool.
And then to bring it
Absolutely.
full circle, now you got, because I was there initially to see both you and Riza, because I hadn't seen Riza for years at that point, and now it's just full circle. Now he's on the label as well, which is
Yeah,
neat.
yeah. We signed Inertia a couple months ago. So he just finished a UK tour with Aria. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and Blacklight Ascension. So I hope I see the guy at some point soon. You know, I haven't seen him in a few years, but yeah, he's on the label now too, which is even cooler. He mastered our first two records.
Nice. That's cool that just came around in the circle. That's cool.
Well, I'd known him since like the early 2000s
Mhm.
in London doing shows. So it's nice to have it all come back again.
Yeah. So last month you released a remix album of a bunch of remixes of one single. I guess is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
So why that track in particular?
Well, Lee, do you want to take this one? I mean,
It's a tough one. It's you never know when a track will be one that people will want to get out, ultimately go out and raid the dance floor for. And this one just seemed like one that just had that kind of hook to it that just lent itself to being a stomper. So
I'm gonna quote our friend Crane, who saw us. We played the Dark Force pre-party, Dark Force Fest at
Of
QXT.
this past year?
Yes, we played the pre-party there with
Oh, okay,
Amulet
sadly I
and
missed. I was not feeling well that night.
uh, we got to play with another label band, Amulet from DC, and so we had it was packed. So we had a really great show. Attendance wise, we got up there to do our thing, and then we played Fourth Turning last, which is the new single. And Crane came up to me afterwards. She was like, "That was an amazing show, but holy fuck, that last song!" And she was like, "You have a banger, you have a hit right there." And I was just like, "Well, I hope so." We also have the next single that I want off the album is Narcissist, and mainly because it's an anti-Trump song, and releasing it after around the election would be cool. I don't know if we're going to get to it because we haven't even lined up remixers for that yet, but I would like that to be the next single, especially since we haven't played it live yet.
Yeah.
But Fourth Turning for the first single, I think, was because I think the strongest track. It's the most powerful track on the album. It's the catchiest track, in my opinion, and it's about a subject matter that was really intriguing to me at the time, which was all doom and gloom stuff about a generational catastrophe, basically.
We got some people over in the comments. Chris CBM says, "Hey, love you, Jim."
Chris CBM, I love Chris. What's up, dude?
And we got my buddy Luke over in the comments saying that was a great party before Dark Force and that you guys put on a great show.
Oh, thank you, Lucas.
Thanks very much.
I'm glad somebody saw us. I mean, there were a lot of people there, and it was an amazing show.
It was actually kind of nice doing that show in a venue like that rather than doing it in the hotel.
Yeah. QXT is like our favorite place to play.
I've been to Dark Force twice and haven't made it to QXTs yet, so hopefully next year.
Yeah, it's awesome there.
You got to check it out. Yeah,
a lot of cool rooms that you can go to. There's different styles of music. Play the. I don't know. It's just a good vibe. The amazing sound people, Raven and Ron, took really good care of us, and I love it there.
Yeah.
Cool. So back to your remix album. How did you choose who you wanted to do the remixes?
Let me see. I'm trying to think. Tragic Impulse. Paul is a dear friend, and his remixing skills have just gotten so amazing. From I followed Paul from when he first started Tragic Impulse, when he had even before that, when he had a band called Eisengeist, and all the way back to Electronic Saviors Volume 2 days. But I knew I wanted Paul for that track because he could, just do an amazing version interface as well. I've always, enjoyed Eric's remixes, but putting Metamorph and Dichro on there. Dichro is a very, very new signing to the label. Metamorph too.
Yeah.
And
I love both of them.
Putting both of those bands on there, I wanted to mix, veteran distortion bands,
Mm.
with some of the newer blood, because those guys are, all those guys are everything to me. So
Absolutely, Chris. Both rule. Great folks.
I really
Thanks.
really adore them, and I think their work it speaks for itself. We have a show coming up at the end of October,
Okay.
Mm.
called Dark Style, and it's sort of a showcase of uh, Pittsburgh dark music, and we're playing Dicrow's playing, Tragic Impulse is playing,
Nice.
Hemlock for Socrates is playing. They're a local act. Bonnie and the Mere Mortals is playing, and Doors in the Labyrinth, a dear friend of mine, Josh, is also playing. So it's going to be like a showcase of 6 bands.
Nice.
And yeah, so having some of the guys who remixed us on that is always great. But yeah, they all did great work. I love that single. And Lee also did the
Mhm.
extended remix
Okay.
of it too. So yeah, now we have a even more extended mix of that song.
Nice. And we mentioned Metamorph. Just a little shout out. She dropped a new song today, new single, Cauldron Bubble Pop. Go check that
Yeah,
out.
brand new song, not even on the album.
Yep, I haven't even gotten a chance to check it out yet, but I'm sure it's great.
It's catchy. It's a catchy one.
All her stuff is.
Yep.
So, all right. So, out back in May, you released "Hope Is the Last Refuge for the Dying."
Yep.
Okay, so explain that title. What does that mean?
Um, this the way I feel about it, like Lee always makes fun of me because I come up with these long dramatic titles for our
Mm-hmm.
albums, and I always kind of like our song titles to be a descriptor, to tell a story, and none of the stuff that I ever write lyrically, which is happy, which matches Lee's vibe, I think, a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and what he's trying to convey with the music. Um, but when it comes to Hope Is the Last Refuge for the Dying, it goes back to even my own struggles with cancer, and where if you're dying, or you have an illness, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't know if you're going to make it, hope is the last thing you cling to, so take refuge in that. And so I wanted it to be, the album is not a happy it's not a happy album. It's just, we don't sing about hopeful things, and but sometimes hope is all you have. So I think
Right.
that there is an element of that in the music, or at least I was trying to convey that. I don't know if I succeeded, but I hope that it came
Yeah,
across.
definitely.
All right. And so where is it? There it is. So where'd that cover art come from?
Well, it's Byron Winton,
Okay.
a very very old friend. I've known Byron a long, long time, like going back to the '90s. One of the best dudes, most talented guy. I mean, he did our first album cover, but he used to do our reinforced stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
He has his own company. He does all the horror conventions with his artwork. He's just an incredible artist and individual. Um, and I, you know, I met up with him for dinner when he was just showing me concepts of what he wanted to do for this, and
Mm-hmm.
and I every time I ask Byron to do my art, I always have a concept in my head that's completely different from what he brings out, and I'm fine with that because it's always way better than what I had in my head. But yeah, that would be Byron. He's amazing.
Cool. Um, so why did you decide to cover anything by Dramarama?
Fortunately, this is another Jimmer's question.
Well, not really, not really. If you want to bring Dana in on this, Lee's wife, we were out on the road. We were going somewhere. We were playing somewhere, Madison, I think, right?
Mm.
Yeah,
That
think so,
Madison was a long drive from Pittsburgh, so we had a gig in Madison, and we were heading out there, and I I remember that song from Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and from when I was a kid, and that song always stuck with me. I always liked it, and I played it for Lee. I was like, we should think about covering this. I was like, it's a fun song. Again, not a very happy song, and like I mean, it's about a relationship and abuse and stuff like that, and like at least that's how I interpret the lyrics. Like I'll even whenever we play live, I'm like, hey, you know, we're queuing up anything, and I'm like, hey, is anybody married here? Just, like, let this be a lesson to you, yeah, and so people seem to really enjoy it. I was with Ethan from Noir and Spawn Ranch and Black Tape. He was in town, so we were heading out to the club, and this was before the album came out. And he's our publicist, so he worked this record to radio and press and DJs. So he said, is this a cover of anything? He was like, this is slamming. He was like, this is so cool. And you know, to hear that from like a guy I listened to his old band in the 90s in college, and it was very flattering. But mainly, do you want to tell the story, Lee, of when
yeah, but I mean, basically, my wife is a musical purist. Let's put it that way. She has some very distinct tastes of things, and I'm always afraid that I'm gonna like something like this. I'm gonna mess it up. But with this, she was like, "Really, if you're gonna do this, don't mess it up." But we didn't mess it up. It was all good in her eyes. So
you can curse. You're allowed to curse on this show. She said, "Don't fuck it up."
Yeah, those are the literal words she used. Yeah.
So like, yeah, I made a post. I remember like right after we recorded it, I made a post that was like, I just recorded vocals for anything, and I tagged her in it. And I was like, I hope we didn't fuck it up. So yeah, it was a great cover. It's not something that I would think that anyone would have expected of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another reason.
And that's always which is important to me for a cover is I don't want to do a cover of a typical EBM band song,
Right.
Like how many remixes can you do of any of these old tracks,
As much as I love them, I don't ever want to cover a Hosiko song. They're
right.
one of my biggest.
How do you even do it?
Yeah, like they're one of my biggest influences, and I love those guys to death. But it wouldn't make sense for us to cover, their stuff. I would want to cover. If we're talking covers, I would want to cover something that doesn't sound like us at all. And Dramarama, they sound nothing at all like us.
No, not at all.
Much more.
All right. Where was I? All right. So one thing I did notice on that album is there's a remix by Nathan from Third Realm, but was the original version of that song on there too?
No, the original version you can only get on the Kill Lock soundtrack.
Okay, I was wondering what the story behind that was.
Yes, The Kid is the name of the song.
Yeah.
And we wrote The Kid for a comic book by Livio Ramondelli, who's an amazing man. He worked on the Transformers comics for IDW Publishing, and he was doing his own creator-owned book under IDW called The Kill Lock, and his artwork is very cool, abstract, post-apocalyptic. If you've not read The Kill Lock, it's awesome.
I have not. I'll check it out.
I think we were up at a Transformers convention in Toronto. This was several years ago, and I was having shots with him at the bar, and it was like the Friday night before the con started. That's when everyone, was at the bar and having drinks and having a good time. I think Cybertronic Spree was like doing some karaoke that night, and uh, so I said, "Hey, how did that Kill Lock book do for you?" Because it was 6 issues,
Mhm.
and he was like, "Actually, really well. IDW was really happy, so they greenlit him for a sequel." And I'm like, would be really cool. And, I'm not going to try to put you on the spot or anything, but what if I got like some of my bands together from my label and we did a soundtrack to your book? And he was just like, dumbfounded. He was just like, wow, would you really do that? And like, I'm like, well, yeah, you already know the kind of music that we do. And, he had, I've given him a few CDs over the years, and he likes electronic music. So, it came together, and he did the artwork for the cover, and we wrote the Kid, which was, I consider, to be our first song in these sessions for this album.
Mhm.
Even though it came in between the last album and this one, it was our first real new song. So you can only get the
It
original
was
of
the first of the newer ones
yeah,
that
yeah,
came out of the album.
but you can only get that original version on the Kill Lock, which is available on Distortion Productions. And there's a ton of other like label bands that have exclusive songs on there that you can't get anywhere else, that were written just for that comic book.
Okay, that's really cool. Actually, most comic books don't get a soundtrack, so that's really cool.
That's something I'm kind of trying to break into because no one else is doing it,
Right.
So I was here first.
um. So unless I was looking in the wrong place, I noticed you have a lack of like videos for your songs. Is there like a reason for that, or?
um, Lee's been
There's no
wanting to do
good
a video.
reason for it.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way.
there's no good reason for it other than time and
I hear that.
and the fact that we live far apart from each other. So to
Oh,
do
okay.
something like that, I mean, we could always, I guess, hire somebody to do, just like do a video. But if we're talking like concert footage or inserting ourselves into the
Mhm.
video or, having us play live in it, it's just something that, you know, would require a lot of preparation
Mhm.
to do it before one of our live shows, I think. But, to have footage taken specifically for a video. But yeah, we no videos yet, but it's something we want to do. I know Lee really wants to do it. It's just finding the time to do it.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, having done it before, I know what it takes to do one, and
Mhm.
said that recently, the last few years, we just leaving the pandemic out of it. We've had issues that would have not made it happen. So
That makes sense. I noticed the song "New War" just not even just the music box like intro, but like the entire song just had a different feel to it than the rest of the album.
That's a Lee question.
that track. I mean, you guys, you before this all started, you guys were going all political, but um, at the risk of going too political, this war just really pisses me the fuck off. And the problem is there's too many wars to worry about. But that one at that moment,
Mhm.
something just hit me with that, and as a having grown up as a Cold War baby,
Mhm.
um, we fought long and hard to stop that shit from happening in Europe,
Mhm.
and then here we are again,
Yeah.
and it just sometimes I play that track back and it gives me chills because it just eh, the subject of it just so pisses me off. But yeah, it's different just because it wasn't meant to be the next Red Locust dance floor track. It was just meant to be what it came out
Right.
to be.
Playing it live's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and just little trivia question. The that actual music in the beginning is actually the Ukrainian national anthem. In case you didn't
Oh,
realize,
I had no idea.
but it's the national anthem done on player piano. You know, the little Tinkerbox.
Okay.
What do you call it?
That
Music
was
box?
really
That's the
creative,
word
and
I
I
was
like
looking for.
that. That's different.
But yeah, and it just grew out of that. Like literally, that was the first thing I searched for. I looked for music box national anthem, and that's where I started writing the track from.
That's
So,
cool. What would you say is the most difficult thing about being in a band, or just being artists in general?
Working with Lee is super easy. So I really have it's the distance. I'd probably
Yeah,
like if you ever been in a
yeah,
long distance relationship, it's the same thing.
that makes
It's the
sense.
same thing, except I don't make out with Lee.
no,
But I just like when we're ready to mix an album, um, we have a process that works that
Hmm.
we've been working on for the last, I don't know, since the band's inception. Like he'll send me files, I'll work on them, record vocals, send them back to him, he'll mix it down, and then when it comes time to like go over the whole album as a whole and mix it down, I'll drive out to Lee's place in Scranton,
Hmm.
mainly just to see the cats.
yeah.
Uh, but that's
And there's a new one. There's a new one you haven't seen yet.
oh yes, new friends. So and I'll drive out there and we'll spend a weekend just in the studio. But Lee threw me a curveball this last time. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, I've been working on this track. It was never one of the album tracks, and I've just been messing around with it. And then a few days before he got here, I just was like, you know what, this is going on the album. Mainly because I thought we were one track short. I just
Hmm.
didn't want to have. I didn't want to have 9 tracks and a remix. I wanted 10 tracks and a remix. Just the OCD in me, but
Hmm.
um, and I said, no, I'm gonna. When Jim gets here, I'm gonna sit him down to here, write lyrics, and we're gonna record it right here. The
That
track was already finished music wise, but
that song was Narcissist, the one that I mentioned
that
earlier,
was
Okay,
Narcissist. Yeah.
and it came together in an afternoon.
that's
Uh,
awesome.
so yeah, Saturday. He's like, "Do you want to? You think you can write a new song like right here, like right?" I'm like, "Now?" I'm like, with no preparation. I'm like, "Give me the headphones, give me the track. I'll see what I can come up with." And it actually came out pretty easily because I just thought about that.
That
Oh,
fuckhead.
orange piece of shit. Uh, but yeah, so that's I like when Lee tells that story. But yeah, really, there's no difficulty. The distance mainly, and playing gigs, it just requires one of us to drive.
Yeah.
If I'm going out to an East Coast show, from Pittsburgh, it's 5-6 hours. Like we just played Philly in what that it was in December. We played Philly, but last summer we played in DC, and then from DC we flew to Tampa where we got spoiled rotten. Thanks, Mark. Mark Paradise from Communion After Dark like spoiled us rotten down there. And we got to play a label showcase down there with Misfit Toys and Tragic Impulse, our friends.
Nice.
And that was like a really fun weekend. Like just we were exhausted because we really didn't sleep. After the DC show, we got 2 hours of sleep before we had to be on a plane.
Oh, jeez.
And
I don't recall
landed.
sleeping that night.
You didn't have any sleep. I dozed off for like an hour and a half in the hotel room, and then like we flew to Tampa. Hung out at Mark's place, and then we went and loaded in, and afterwards they took us to the castle, which was really cool. Best club I've ever been in my life. For dancing, just unbelievable. It was like the promised land. I was like, this is like a dream come true. If you're ever in Tampa, you must go. Uh, Insane.
Speaking of playing shows, do you have any coming up for the rest of this year?
The one I mentioned in October, yes, the dark style one here in Pittsburgh. But there is a chance that we may have 2 gigs lined up. I only just mentioned this to Lee like a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance we might be playing in Richmond and DC again
Cool.
with Noir and Gen Cab. I don't know if that's happening or not. Um, I'm not in charge of that, so we'll see. I would love to because Richmond was one of our first places we ever played a Red Locust show at the Fallout, and I love Jackie to death, and I would love to play there again. So um, yeah, that's so that might happen. It might not. And I love Gen Cab and I love Noir, so
Yeah.
playing with both of those bands would be awesome.
Hey, I see you over there in the comments. What up, Ken Magerman of Sounds and Shadows?
Kenny, where's Kenny at? I gotta look at these comments.
He said, "Hello, friends."
Hi, Kenny.
All right. This question's a little bit off the wall. If you were an animal, what kind would you be and why?
Lee's first on this one.
Oh, geez, I knew you were going to do that. That is a tough one. That's.
I mean, everyone's thought,
Yeah.
thought that, but it would have to be it would have to be something that flew.
Yeah.
Just because I would want that experience.
But see, if you did something like an eagle, then you can also attack ground objects. So that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Dive bomb.
An octopus is my favorite animal, so I would, I would, being an octopus would be kind of cool.
All right. Ken says, "I'm right here. Hi, Jimenez." All right. I have a couple of questions just for Jim. Sorry, Lee.
No, it's okay.
So, obviously, you are half of Distortion Productions, right?
I'm all of it now.
Or you're all of it. Okay.
I started the label with Chase Dudley, who was my partner in Electronic Savior. So it kind of grew out of that. But Chase has moved on to
okay.
the family life, and he just had a baby earlier this year.
Oh, that's good. That's good for him.
Yeah, and he got married and doesn't live here in Pittsburgh anymore either. So essentially, it's just me running the label.
Okay. Might want to update your bio on your website.
yeah, there's always that too. I do keep in touch with him about some things, and as a consultant, so I still keep him close by. But yep.
Okay, so how did Distortion come to be?
He kind of pushed me into it, actually.
Yeah.
I will always say that it's Chase's fault. There was one particular night that I remember we were working on Electronic Saviors 2. So that'll tell you how old this is.
Mm-hmm.
2011, maybe 2012. He had his own project called Boxed Warning. And he said, I want to put a CD out. But I want it to be under Distortion Productions. I'm like, you mean like a record label release? I'm like, I'm not ready for that. The Electronic Saviors albums take me like 2 years to put one of those together. I'm crazy for even thinking of doing a 7th one, which is still, up in the air. It's scheduled to come out next year, but honestly, it's up to the bands.
Right.
Submissions are due in 4 months, and I do not have what you would call an album at this point at Electronic Saviors. So we'll see if 7 happens or not. But it spun out of there. He was like, let's start a label together. So uh, our first release was that. Other than Electronic Saviors Premium Edition, the 2 disc that came with that set, Box Warning was our first release, and then I remember getting a message from Stephen Archer from Stoneburner and Ego Likeness, and he said Stoneburner wasn't really a thing yet, and he said, "How serious are you about this label thing?" And I'm like, "As serious as you've known me to be about anything, really." And he was like, "I have a side project that." Actually, no, Stoneburner was a thing because his first track was on the premium edition of Electronic Saviors 2. But I didn't know how serious of a thing it would become for him. We signed him for 1 album and he gave us 4.
Right.
And then he's with Cop International now, which is great. Christian's awesome, and so, I mean, it just sort of started growing from there. We signed Spider Lilies in DC. Some of the early signings were bands that I was not prepared to handle. Like the big artists, Nash from KMFDM signed on with us very, very early. And that was more or less a distribution deal than an actual signing. But, having 2 Nash CDs with the Distortion logo on is pretty cool. Klaus Larson's side project from a leather strip called Amtier Park. We put that out, a CD and a vinyl. Tenek from the UK, Dope Stars Inc. Some of those bands like super early in our catalog. Before we grew into what we are now, which is around 30 artists. So like that's kind of, it's been 12 years that the label's been in existence, which I look back at some of the bands, the labels in the 90s, like that were seminal for that time period, like 21st Circuitry and Reconstriction, Fifth Column. And I look at the lifespans of those labels and they weren't around for very long at all.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it sort of blows me away that it's been 12 years already as a record label. But I couldn't imagine doing it any other way. I love my bands.
Funny you mentioned Stephen Archer. Actually, next Tuesday I'm gonna have him on here.
Make fun of him for me.
Okay, I will, and I'll tell him that you told me to. Ken has a question. What has running a label taught you about how to make Red Lokust better as a band?
Oh, man.
That's a good question.
I think organizational skills definitely play into it. No doubt. Whenever, putting together the artwork, the tracks, the track order, all of that stems from, I think, my experience with Electronic Saviors and how I order those tracks, and sequence them. But essentially, that is a good question, Ken. But it's definitely made my skills and organization better for sure, and have everything streamlined. Lee's very easy to work with. So does that answer the question? I would say that would be my number one answer to that.
All right, that's a good answer. All right. So what do you have, like, any specific goals you're working towards with Distortion?
I just want my bands to be happy.
Yeah.
Number one, that's my number one priority all the time. I tell everyone from the get-go, if I'm interested in a particular band that wants to come, to our family, I can't move mountains. I'm one dude. I have a day job. I'm exhausted a lot. because this is all I do. I have a job in a record store, and it's everything I do in regards to the label ties into my other jobs,
Hmm.
whether it be, if I'm DJing at a club, if I'm doing music for the band, if I'm putting out albums by bands I admire on my label, or if I'm doing a new Electronic Saviors, it all wraps together. It's the I couldn't imagine it being any other way. A lot of people
Hmm.
think I'm crazy for doing the amount of stuff that I do. Like, when I decided to do Electronic Savior 7, you know, my own partner was like, "Are you sure you want to put yourself through that again?" Because it's a gargantuan amount of work.
Right.
And when you add in stuff like, let me just tell you what I'm going to do as soon as I'm done here. I have a metric ton of pig vinyl sitting out in my hallway that I have to package and ship out the orders of the Sensation reissue for Giles at Armalite, because I'm his American distributor for his pig releases. So I've been doing that every night for the last 3 weeks, and hitting the post office first thing in the morning
Hmm.
before I go into my day job. So yeah, and everyone's just like, how do you find the time to do all this stuff you do? And I'm like, back to Ken's question, organizational skills are very, very important. You fit dinner in where you can. It's you sort of live like that sort of road mentality for touring bands. You do what you can when you can. So if that makes sense. But as far as goals go, um, I would I would love to, for some of my bands to do national tours. I am completely aware of how hard that is for
Hmm.
an underground act, and the costs of everything, and you know just how far in advance clubs seem to book up nowadays. And yeah, it's difficult, but uh, realistically speaking, every band that I sign should at least be out there playing a couple shows a year.
Yeah.
I do have some studio only acts like Trade Secrets where it's just not possible for them to play live. But um, and but I will always encourage my bands to play live. So ultimately, the goal is to just like survive.
Hmm. Hey, what's up, Will from Moon Coil Media? He says Jim is going for global domination, and he is succeeding.
What's up, Will? I don't know about how you measure success, but hey, I'm 48 and I'm happy. You know,
No,
I'm
then
not.
I'd say you're successful.
I would say that as long as Lee's happy with what I'm doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
We have there is more work that we have to do before the end of the year. I should say me, because Lee's probably already done with the work that I have to do, which is our Electronic Savior song. We
That's
have
done already. That from my end, that's done. Yeah.
okay. We have there is a track for a compilation that is very important, that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. I promised I would not say anything, um, but it is for a very, very dear friend. And thirdly, we there's a cover that we're doing for the D Warsaw tribute album that Regen is doing. So
Nice.
those are three things that we have to do in the next 4 months.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Um, we already talked about no, mentioned Metamorph just dropped something. Are any of your other bands releasing stuff right now that you can talk about?
Yes,
If you want to.
I'll tell you everything.
All right.
I'll tell you everything that's coming up. I might leave stuff out because there's a lot. This Friday, there's a new remix by Glass Apple Bonsai dropping, and this is news to me as of 2 days ago. So uh, this was very sudden, but it's a really awesome new saxophone remix that Daniel's dropping this Friday. Um, Amulet has two more singles coming before their album drop in October. Inertia's new disc drops October 4th. The Russian White is going out on the road with Solemn Shapes for like 2 or 3 weeks. And his album Funeral Art on CD and pink vinyl comes out October 4th. But I'm shipping those early. I have them, I have pre orders for them. I will be shipping those soon because I want people to be able to go to those shows and, know the
Mhm.
songs and stuff. There's a new Interface record coming out November 8th. It's his first album in 5 years. Um, there, I think, is another Metamorph thing coming. There is a Solemn Shapes EP coming. That should be out in time for the tour with Russian White. Um, and I will be at Cold Wave selling all of this stuff. So I'll be vending there, um, selling everything that you usually see me at Dark Force Fest or Mechanismus with a table. I'll be there vending everything. And then there's nothing in December. There's nothing in January because those 2 months I just want to refresh, recharge,
Mhm.
and prepare for next year because next year is going to be very busy.
All right. What message do you guys have for anybody who's watched this?
Lee's full of messages.
I'm just thankful for all the fans that pay attention to this and actually care about the music. That's all I do it for. I'm not in it for the money or the glory. So, um, yeah, I'm just thankful for all the fans.
I would say, I'll back that up with do what makes you happy. We only get to do this once.
Yep.
Uh, if you're struggling, seek professional help. Don't let the everyday the stuff that happens in everyday life get you down. Um, do what you love. Ultimately, you want to be at the end of your life and look back on it with fondness rather than regret. I think, and
Mm-hmm.
so I try to do as much as I can while I'm still here. I'm lucky to
Mhm.
even be here. Uh, I'm living on the way I tell people I am living on borrowed time for the last 16 years.
Mhm.
So there are other people who aren't as fortunate, and I kind of feel that whatever I do, no matter how exhausted I might be from the label or the band or Satyrs or just my day job, that
Mhm.
ultimately it's making someone happy somewhere. Um, that said, listen to us on Spotify because that seems to be the reason that or the only way people can get onto festivals now.
Yeah.
we only have like 350 monthly listeners on Spotify, and we need to get that up. Not that I hate Spotify. I
Me
hate it.
too. I'm always
I hate
like,
it.
I don't want to use it because it screws people over. But at the same time, everyone, those are the only numbers anyone cares about. And it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
and
what do I do?
I don't I don't particularly I will never endorse that because it's making somebody rich, but it sure isn't the label or the artists.
Exactly.
Um, and so uh, it's not a good
Oh,
metric. Not a good
one
metric of
other good one that
success.
we just had though, of course, was charting on the DAC, which was
Ah,
really
yes,
nice.
yeah. We spent 8 weeks on the German charts with
Nice.
such scene luminaries as Pearl Jam and Kings of
Pearl Jam.
Leon. No, like not to downplay those bands, but I mean, Funker
But
Vogt was
go
on
ahead.
there at the same time as us, and Clan of Zymox was on there, Ashbury
Yep.
Heights. So a number of our fellow dark scene bands were on there with us, which was so cool
That's
to
awesome.
see.
Yeah.
Who's the dude from Slayer that was on there for a good long time with us?
Oh, can't remember his name now.
Not it's not Lombardo, even though he did release a solo album too. It was the other guy. Uh, but he was on there at the same time. That Slayer dude was on there at the same time as us, and I don't think I don't think we ever beat him as far as being up further than him on the charts. He was always higher than us. I'm
Thanks,
like,
Will.
hey,
Kerry King.
Kerry King, that's it. Yeah,
Kerry King, that was it.
Yep, that's exactly it. Yeah. So, but yeah, Spotify. I can go into whole write a dissertation on how Spotify does not pay. Because I see the numbers. I see the numbers, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It does not matter. You can sell 8 CDs at a show and get paid for what you just made in a quarterly statement. So go sell some physical media, and I get it. It's not for everybody, and Spotify is the path of least resistance for a lot of people. But it's just not. It's not my thing. But I'll do whatever. If my artists think it's important, I will, respect that.
Yeah.
And, I always respect.
It's hard to respect something that treats artists so badly, but
yes,
exactly.
yes. Yeah, I agree. That's a great point, Lee. So, yeah. But yeah, do what makes you happy.
Absolutely. All right, so on Saturday, I'll be on here with Hacks VHS, and then Tuesday, I'll be on with Stephen Archer. And both of you, if you want to hang out after the credits roll, you're welcome to hang out off the air. If you don't want to, well, anyway, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Eric, so much for having us. This was a blast. You let us ramble for an hour.
I love that. I have some people come on. I ask the same number of questions. We're done in 10 minutes. And I'm like, well, that was short and sweet. No, I love actually, having a conversation.
I greatly appreciate it. And to everyone that's hanging out there in chat, you guys are awesome. Thanks so much for coming in.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
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 Where's my thing? Oh, there we go.
You